So I'd like to welcome everybody to our final faculty seminar of 2020. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We will start up again in the new year, and we hope that everybody can join us again in 2021. Today's faculty seminar is from Dr. Gabrielle from our Applied Psychology ARC, and she's going to tell us about teaching symbolic play skills to children with autism. Thank you, Gabrielle.
All right, thank you, Jen. Yeah, nice to see everybody here. And today I'm gonna talk about my research in teaching symbolic play skills to children with autism. Second one. Okay, here's some background information. Symbolic play skills are related to abstract or representational abilities. That's from Piaget, cognitive psychology tradition. And symbolic play skills are also related to language development, social development in later childhood. And next. All right, and Leslie, he's also a cognitive psychologist. He distinguished functional play from symbolic play. And functional play is play like doing a puzzle, pushing a car, beating a drum. These are considered functional play, where symbolic play is a more complex play. For example, using a ball as if it's a hat. And Leslie proposed 3 types of symbolic play. The first one, he calls this object substitutions, meaning that the child will use different objects and then switch around. For example, the child may use a block to represent a car. A block, but actually the block represents the car. It's object substitution, so that's one type. And then another type would be attribution of pretend property or object. For example, we often see that children in their pretend play activities, they will pretend that an empty cup is full. Right, there's empty cup, but they pretend to drink from the cup. So in this case, they were saying this cup is full, but actually it's empty. So that's related to the properties of objects. And then another type would be imaginary objects. And in this case, it's similar to pantomime. This child will perform some play actions without using any object, right? So we see these 3 basic forms of symbolic play in children's play activities. All right. Yep, and symbolic play in autism, there is a hypothesis that symbolic or pretend play behavior is one of the major deficits for children with autism. And they compare children with autism and children without autism and found that most children with autism have difficulties in symbolic play behaviors. They don't demonstrate symbolic play as typically developing children or children with other developmental disabilities such as Down syndrome. And also that's why symbolic play is one of the test items in Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. This is the standard of autism assessment. For example, there are some test items there, the birthday party, imaginary play, and demonstration of tasks without objects, and also symbolic imitation. These are the test items in this autism assessment that assess different types of symbolic play that we just mentioned. And also symbolic play in early intervention programs. In behavior programs, we often use the assessment VB-MAP or ABLES, these two behavioral assessment as a guidance for curricular design for children receiving early intervention. They also have some items, and one is using common object in creative ways. So this is one item of assessment in these two behavioral assessments. And from the literature, symbolic play skills seem to build on functional play skills. In other words, functional plays are prerequisite for a child to learn symbolic play. And also for children with autism, they need specific training to acquire the skill. And currently there's some play skills intervention. These are targeted for basic or functional play. For example, the conditioning, toys as reinforcers. These are for children who do not have any interest to play with toys. So we have a stimulus conditioning procedure to condition toys as reinforcers. And also there are some studies, they use toy figurines with multiple exemplar training or matrix training, and they use video modeling, they use verbal scripts, they have written scripts as a prompt, and so these are commonly used in the play intervention. And also there's one study, they use doll or stuffed animals or figurines to facilitate switching roles in children's play. This child can switch role between a and a baby, different roles. So these are some behavior procedures, but they don't target specifically to symbolic play. All right, next. All right, and in the literature right now, we have some symbolic play interventions. Initially, before we started our own studies that I will introduce today, we look at these available studies and we tried to replicate, but we found some issues. They are almost impossible to replicate because they did not report specific procedures or the items that they used in their studies. And then I also requested instructional manual from Cassary team. And after I looked at the manual, I still, have no idea, what I should do to replicate the study. They use discrete trials and naturalistic teaching strategies. And also the other one is also a naturalistic, they call this pivotal response training. In the studies, they have very few information regarding what was taught and then what was done. They just list 3 basic forms of symbolic play, object substitution, imaginary objects, and also attribution of pretend properties. So they list that, but they did not have specific target skills. And because we didn't have the details, and then that's why I was thinking maybe we should emphasize the analyses of the behavior processes from typically developed developing children's experience, and then how they bring their real life experiences into their play activities. So we started our journey on behavior analysis of processes for each type of symbolic play behavior, and then based on our analyses, we then develop specific intervention procedures, and also for children who have verbal abilities, or for children who just began to speak, whose verbal repertoire is not that strong. So here, our first studies are related to object substitutions. And all right, I have to wait for like 2 seconds to change the slide. Okay, study 1. Here is the information for the study. It's published, and hold on. Yeah, it would take me a minute to switch the slide. All right, let me turn the slide. All right, here. In our analyses, there are 4 terms in operant conditioning. The first term would be the MO, motivating operation, and then it's the antecedent, which is the discriminative stimulus. And then the behavior is the child's response. And then the consequence, right? Is it enforcement or is it a punishment? Basically, in our instruction, 99% of the time we use reinforcement. All right, and then this time we focused on the analysis on the MO, the motivation. We call this motivating operation. In this case, we arrange play activities with missing items, but we require the child to complete the task. So why do we do that? We do this to create a motivating situation that this child is asked to complete a task without the item that's required. So in order to continue the ongoing play activities, the child has to complete the required task by using available items to substitute missing items. So we are using this arrangement to teach object substitutions. So, and we found this one, this approach is suitable for younger children who may have limited verbal speech, and we use the motivating operation to establish object substitution, symbolic play actions without requiring to have vocal responses. And in this case, well, next one. All right, yep. And these are the materials that we use. We created 4 play themes, and then this is one example. Theme 1 is in the kitchen. And then each theme, we have 5 activities. And then each activity, we arrange to have 2 missing items. And then we provide 3 potential substitutes for each missing item. And this is an example. For example, in the kitchen, we have 5 different activities. And then the first one, making stir fry. And then the 2 missing items were spatula or the vegetables. And then we provided some possible substitutes. The first one for spatula, we provided straw, a block, a ruler, and for the vegetables that are missing, then we provided a cylinder block and a plastic ball and eraser as possible substitute. These are just some examples. Also, the next one. Hold on. It's not going through. And in this study, the participants were 2 boys and 1 girl, and then they could request for their preferred items, and then they could label or identify at least 50 different common items and their functions. And then they also respond to social questions, even though they could not maintain a conversation. But if you ask them questions, they could answer. And then also they all have functional play skills. All right, give me. All right, and next one. All right, the objective, the target behavior is that the child can complete the tasks using one of the substitute provided. All right, for example, let me see. Yep, here is the intervention procedure. Arranging the items, say in the kitchen, and the activity will be cooking dumplings. And we gave a pot and then some 3 different substitutes for dumplings. For example, marbles, paper clips, or scrap paper, for example. And an instructor will create a play situation. For example, I'm hungry, let's cook some dumplings for dinner. Here's a pot and some other things, right? So no dumplings, just a pot. And so we ask the child basically to cook some dumplings, and we provide a pot and no dumplings, but other things, marbles, paper clips, or scrap paper. They don't look like dumpling at all. And then the instruction included, well, initially the child won't have any responses, right? So we had a prompt hierarchy. The first one in a hierarchy, when there's no response, we provide a gestural prompt by pointing to one of the substitutes. And if the child doesn't respond, then we give a verbal direction. Use one of these things as dumplings. We point to those potential substitutes, and we ask the child, you can use one of these things as dumplings. And then if the child doesn't respond, then we provide instructor modeling. The instructor will say, let me cook some dumplings, and then start to model the play behavior using one of the substitutes. And the child usually start imitating the behavior of the instructor. And if not, finally, the last prompt strategy in the hierarchy was the full physical prompt, where the instructor will gently guide the child to complete the play action, the task that's required, which is in this case cooking dumplings. All right, and so this is our first study, teaching object substitution. As you can see, this is child 1, theme 1, 2, 3, and 4 different themes. And then the child learned how to do that using a substitute when some of the items required for the job was missing. Okay, this child 1 and child 2. Also, we see the learning is going pretty good for these 3 kids. And all right, and then our next studies, these 2 are conducted in different places with different research teams that I collaborated with, and also teach object substitutions. But this one, we use a different analysis, and then the instructional approach is different. Here's the analysis for object substitutions. In this case, in behavior analysis, there's a naming hypothesis. Naming hypotheses there's one type of naming called intraverbal naming. In this naming process, the associated words are formed as a group, and members of the group share the same behavior functions. And what this means is that we put associated words into one group. For example, bread and jam, right? And chopsticks and bowls. You know, these objects or the words that we see, they are associated with each other often. That's why we put these stimuli into one group. Okay, and then when we do that, there is equivalence relation among these stimuli, and then every member of the group, every stimulus in this group, they acquire the same behavior function eventually. Okay, and when we use this intraverbal naming process to analyze object substitutions, for example, and one is we have three items: a ball, a hat, and a boat, for example. And the response for the ball is to hold food, right? That's the function of a ball. And the response for a hat is put on one's head, right? So that's how you use a hat. And then the third one, a toy boat, right? Boat moves on water. So the boat moves on water, there would be the response for the boat. And through the intraverbal naming process, these items are formed into one relation. They're equivalent to each other. So a ball equals a hat and equals a boat. So in this case, the responses or the interactions with these items are all the same because of the relation. So in this case, responses for a ball, a hat, or a boat can be holding food and put on one's head, or moving on water. And in other words, the functions of each item are shared among every member in this stimulus class. So when we use this analysis, the intervention procedure is different. So we use another approach to teach object substitutions for kids who do not demonstrate the skill. So the target behavior is that a child can provide multiple responses and demonstrate creative ways to play with each common item. So they have to tell us several potential substitutes, and then they have to demonstrate play actions using the substitute. All right, next one. Well, it's not going through. Okay, yeah. The participants for this study, we had 4 boys and 1 girl. We had 5 kids ranging from 3 to 6 years old. And then they could request for items, and then they could identify or, label at least 50 objects and their functions. They could respond to social questions, but they have, they couldn't maintain the conversations. And 3 of them displayed functional play skills, and then they did not have, not 3 of them, 5 of them. They all display functional skills, but they don't have symbolic play skills. And then we did an assessment on that. And the details of the assessment procedures are reported in the papers that we published. All right. And the materials we use are the common items. Anything that's, common in the children's experiences. For example, a ball, and then for each target item, we have 4 different substitutes. And then we require them to perform the functions of each substitute using the bowl. Okay, so in this case, a bowl can be a cake, can be a hat, and a bathtub, and a turtle. So in the instruction, we present a bowl, and then here is the procedure. We present the bowl, for example, and then what is this? What do you do with it? It's a bowl, and then use it to hold food, for example. So that's the real function of a bowl, right? And the question, next question would be, what can you pretend with this bowl? And we expect the child to provide multiple responses. So for example, the child said a hat, and then the action, the motor action would be putting a bowl on someone's head, right? So in this case, the teaching procedure would be, if there's no response, we'll provide a picture of the substitutes, and with an echoic prompt and modeling of the play action using the target object, a ball. For example, in this case, well, it's not going here. I'm trying to, oh no, not this one. I'm trying to flip the slide, and there's some delay. Okay, in this case, we present a ball to the child, and the first response would be, say, a hat, right? And if the child doesn't have the response, we will present a picture of a hat. So what can you pretend with the ball? And then we'll present a picture of a hat, and then the child will say a hat. And we'll provide modeling of the motor response, which is using the ball to put on someone's head as if it's a hat. Okay, so we use the ball that's given to the child, and then we use the picture of the hat, and then we are requiring the child to first provide a vocal response, a hat, and then using the ball to perform the action as if it's a hat. Okay, and then the intervention will include, say, cake, hat, and a bathtub, and a turtle. So we will present pictures of different substitutes to prompt the child to use the ball to substitute these 4 different items, and use the ball to perform the actions of these 4 different items during the instruction. Or I'm trying to flip. All right. Yeah, this is the graph. As you can see, their responses was low during baseline, and then and in the instruction session, their responses increased to a high level. And we also measure the squares are the novel responses. These are the non-target responses the child they created during instruction. So we think this approach, the child has to generate multiple responses, and then there's some novel responses that occurred in the process. So this is another approach that we have used to teach object substitutions. All right, so these are all the kids, and then they acquire the skill. And in the next study, we did imaginary objects. And in this type of symbolic play, basically the children, they perform the play actions without any object. Okay, very similar to what we see in pantomime, but we ask the child to describe to us what they are doing because there's no object there. Okay, and then in autism assessment, and this is one of the test items where the evaluator, the assessor, asks the child to perform, to describe and to show the actions of brushing teeth without any actual object. Okay, so we did some analyses of the symbolic play behavior in imaginary objects, and we used one concept in behavior analysis called conditioned seeing. Okay, what is conditioned seeing? According to Skinner, it's a behavior that occurs in the absence of the actual stimulus as a result of the association with that stimulus in the learning history. So, meaning that conditioned seeing, someone demonstrate a behavior that's associated with the object, but the object is not present there. So even if the object is not there, the behavior is still demonstrated as if the object is present there because the learning history, right? And Skinner used one example, for example, you hear a snake, right? Snake, and then somebody have like avoidance behavior because snakes appear to be scary, or somebody try to avoid snakes in the past. They have learned that these creatures are very dangerous, then we ought to avoid them. So because of learning history, somebody says a snake, and then you will, have some kind of avoidance based on somebody saying snake, right? So even though there's no snakes here, and you still have the behavior as if the snakes are really here. All right, and in another seminal paper, Horn and Low, they also propose that tagged responses without the presence of actual objects can evoke conditioned seeing or behaviors associated with that object. So in other words, they elaborate from Skinner saying that tagged responses, as we say, snakes, somebody says snakes, and someone will behave as if snakes are really here, even though there's no snakes present in real. Okay, so we use this concept to explain how imaginary objects appear in children's play activities. So looking at the requirement, the child has to tag his own actions. When the tagged response is there, the child is behaving according to the tagged responses. So the child demonstrates some behaviors associated with that object when the child is tagging the object without the presence of the object. Okay, basically. So the child has to tag his action. For example, I'm drawing, and display the behaviors associated with it without real object. For example, the child is showing writing or drawing actions without, a pencil and paper, for example. All right. And so based on analyses, we know that, well, it's not going through to the next slide. Let me. All right. In these studies, we have 3 children, and then they also have man tag intraverbal, you know, but the intraverbal is also limited to answering questions. And the child could describe and perform play actions without actual objects. So that's our target behavior. And the targets we use like these activities that they like, you know, building blocks, stacking rings, drawing, driving, basketball, jumping ropes, for example. All right, and the intervention procedure, again, the instructor will create a play context, right? That's play pretend. This is a pen, this is a paper, here they are yours, and then you can play. So we are using the verbal descriptions, and here's a pen for you, here's paper, but we don't really have the object there. So we just pretend, you know, there's a pen, there's a paper, and then you can start drawing, for example, but we don't have the object, just doing verbal and then some actions. So, well, supposedly the child will demonstrate the play actions, right? And then if they don't demonstrate play actions, the teacher will have modeling and verbal direction. For example, the teacher will perform the action of drawing, you know, look, drawing, and, you know, and will assist the child to perform the same or similar actions. And then the second one, the instructor keep going. What are you doing, right? And I'm drawing. And if the child doesn't respond, I highlighted there, we use echoic prompt. You know, we prompt the child to respond with I'm drawing while he is pretending to draw with a pen and, you know, or pencil and the paper, right? And then the next, the instructor, you know, will ask details. What are you drawing, right? And the child may say, you know, I'm drawing an apple while, you know, doing the action, you know, see if he's drawing an apple. So the next one, we will add some details. And then if this doesn't happen, we use the same prompt hierarchy, which is modeling, verbal direction, and physical prompt, and echoic prompt for the verbal responses. So in this case, we prompt a different description of a detail, and then we prompt different play actions each time. So in other words, we are teaching them multiple different responses for the play actions. We don't teach them to play the same thing every time, because we don't want them to just imitate the same play action every time. So that's why we provide multiple responses for different play actions. All right, in this case, well, as we see this, we have 3 participants and then 2 settings. One setting, we do this on tabletop setting, and then the other setting was in a gym. So in the gym, we have different physical activities like basketball or jumping ropes, but in the tabletop, we have more activities like writing or drawing, that kind of tabletop activities. So as you see in baseline, their performance are limited, you know, from low to middle level, and after the instruction, the performance reached to a higher level and then maintained for about 2 months after the instruction was completed. All right, we have three. Yep, three participants across 2 settings. And then our next study, it's more complicated. This one also involve imaginary objects, but the children, they have more advanced verbal behavior, so they could say more basically. And then we taught them to perform a series of actions. And here, in this study, the target behavior was that the child can describe and perform a series of actions without actual objects, and then there are at least 6 or more steps involved in each task. For example, the first task, washing face, brushing teeth, mopping floor, setting up table, eating a meal. So these are tasks that requires several responses in a chain. So they have to perform each action and explain to us what they are doing, basically. Okay, and yeah, 3 children, they were enrolled in general education, and they could maintain more conversation compared to previous study. They could answer questions, but they don't continue the conversation. But these kids, after answering the questions, they can ask questions. So they are more advanced compared to the kids in previous study, but they still do not have symbolic play skills. Okay. For these kids, well, it's not going through. Same analysis, conditioned seeing, right? So based on the analysis, we used video modeling in this study. So the intervention procedure is video modeling. We always provide multiple exemplars. That is, we don't teach them the same things for them to imitate only. We use multiple exemplars to promote response variability. So they have varied responses each time, even though they are the same questions, but they can tell you different answers. Okay, and the modelers, we have an adult and a child, and in the task analysis, we have variations for each task. For example, washing face, right? Washing face, people have different steps for washing face, so we have 3 variations in these tasks. So, and also the verbal descriptions and the corresponding actions, we also have variations for each task. So in other words, we don't model the same things over and over. We have different variations in our exemplars when we show them the videos. And because these kids are more advanced, we just show them the videos, and after we show them the videos, we ask them to perform the actions, and we did not use any prompt or anything. So this is a result. Well, they acquire the target responses. After viewing the videos, they could demonstrate imaginary objects without, any prompt or any help. They did this independently, but these are like how many sessions it took them to acquire the task, So, and we also measured unscripted actions, meaning these are responses created by the participant. They are not targeted, they are not shown in the videos. So they have some unscripted responses there for each task. All right, and next would be a different child. Yep, and this child was, acquired a target faster with less sessions, and also the next child also and have some these are different tasks: washing face, eating meals, and clean up dinner table, for example. All right, and so this is video modeling to teach imaginary objects. And our next. All right, next one, the third type is attribution of pretend properties. In this case, this paper is still under revision. We're gonna resubmit to Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. We'll see how it goes. This one is as complicated. In our analysis, we use the relational frame theory. In this theory, I'll just go through the theory briefly, and then how we analyze this, and then how we develop the teaching procedure based on the analysis. In relational frame theory learning, we have the ability to learn through creating bidirectional links between things. Okay, and then the relational responding is based on relations that are arbitrarily applied between the stimuli. And the relational frames can be a frame of coordination based on sameness or equivalent relation, or distinction, A is different from B, or hierarchical, like in our family tree, right? One is bigger than another, smaller or younger. Okay, these are different potential relational frames, but here we are using the frame of coordination or the equivalence relation here in our analysis. And transformation of stimulus functions is an important idea in relational frame theory. It's very similar to our analysis of object substitutions. Stimulus functions of members in a relational frame are altered based on the relation. For example, we have A and B and C, three different stimuli. They are initially neutral stimuli belonging to the same relational frame. So A equals B, B equals C, so they equal each other. So now A has become reinforcing, and this function is transferred to B and C via this frame. So the behavior function of B and C are transformed from neutral to reinforcing, or the other way would be aversive. So in other words, every member in the same relational frame, in our case is a coordination frame, they are the same, and then also their behavior functions are shared. So this is very similar to our analysis of object substitutions, but except object substitutions, we're using a naming hypothesis to analyze the behavior. I guess we can use relational frame to analyze that too. But yeah, and in this one, that's what we used is relational frame theory to analyze the behavior. So in attribution of pretend properties, in this kind of symbolic play behaviors, of course, the interactions with objects and events in daily life are transferred to play activities, right? This is what happens in children's play activities. And then we're using a relational frame of coordination. They have to form a frame of coordination real object equals a name, right? And for example, real apple, the name is apple. And then the name equals a similar mock object or an arbitrary object. For example, the name of apple is applied to a toy apple or a placeholder, which is an arbitrary object that doesn't look like an apple in any ways, okay? And then stimulus properties of real objects. Stimulus properties of real objects were like, for example, apple looks, white flesh inside and red skin or green skin or yellow skin. And also taste sweet or tart or smells like apple. These properties are transferred to similar mock object or arbitrary object used in play activities, right? For example, the properties of good smell or sweet taste are transferred from a real apple to a toy apple and a placeholder that we call it apple, right? So in this case, the discriminative functions of mock objects or arbitrary objects used in the play activities are transformed through the frame of coordination. So in this case, a toy apple or a placeholder acquires the stimulus properties of a real apple. They look like real apple, they smell like a real apple, and then they taste like real apple. So this is what we see in children's symbolic play activities, where they attribute pretend properties to the play objects. All right, and yeah, in this study, we have 3 participants, and they can request, they can label items and some functions, and then they respond to social questions. They couldn't maintain a conversation, so they have limited conversation skills, but they could receptively identify sensory properties like hard, soft, big, small, wet, dry, for example. Receptively identify, meaning that we show them different pictures. We ask them to point to which one is hard, which one is soft, which one is big, which one is small. So they could point. They probably could not label, but they could point. That's what we tested. All right, in this intervention, all right, the objective, the target behavior is that the child can label sensory properties of target object when tested with mock object or arbitrary object. So in this one, this study, we use a different approach. In previous studies, we taught the skills directly by showing them, by modeling, and by prompt. We show them the actions, the play actions, and then we taught them these behaviors directly. But in this one, we use an indirect procedure to do that. And here are the materials that we use. In the intervention, we use real items. Apple, orange juice, gummy. These are the preferred items, preferred toys of the participant. And in the intervention, we use the real items. They can taste it, they can play with it, or they can, smell it. So the real things are used in intervention sessions. And after that, we tested the symbolic play behavior using mock object and arbitrary object. So the mock object, the toy apples, right? They look like real apple, and also, fake orange juice box, for example. So these are the materials that we used in our study. And then the next, the intervention procedure. So again, in the intervention procedure, we use the real object, and we ask them sensory questions. And for example, we use a real apple. The child can really eat the apple, can smell the apple, and then taste the apple and touch the apple for real. Okay, so the instructor, we ask the child, how does it look? And, it's red, round, the different features, right? And then how does it taste? It tastes sweet, tart, and, cold, or, different properties for taste. And then we also ask, how does it smell? Smell good, smell fruity, or, different properties for each sensory modality. And if this child could not respond, we still have a prompt hierarchy. The first one would be verbal direction, look at it and taste it or smell it, right? And then the child could do it. And if the child doesn't respond, then we provide a echoic model for them. And we also provide different properties each time. We don't teach them the same things. Again, we use multiple exemplars. That's the key in the intervention. We teach different exemplars. And after the intervention was done, we tested them in probe trials and using mock object, the fake apple. We don't use the real apple in our probe, in our test. So the intervention, the training objects are real things. And then the test objects are the fake things, fake apples or arbitrary thing that doesn't look like apple at all, but we just call them apples, okay? Because we want to form the coordination frame. We want to establish a relational frame that each member in the frame equals each other, okay? So this is the graph this is graph only for test objects, either the mock object or the arbitrary object, okay? And this graph shows the test for mock object. So the fake apples, for example, right? The bread, in the intervention session, they are eating real bread. But in the our test, we test a fake bread because this qualifies attribution of pretend properties, right? In children's symbolic play, right? They have to use non-real objects in their play activities and then identify those pretend properties. So this is the graph for mock objects. And we can see in baseline, they have very limited correct responses, like from 0 to probably in the middle level, the best. And after the intervention, they could respond, to very good, right? 100% accuracy. So in this case, we are teaching them using an indirect approach. We use the real object in the intervention sessions, but we tested the target behavior, symbolic play behavior, using the fake object and then the arbitrary objects. Okay, and these are the results. All right, and I think that's, yeah, that's the studies we have. And well, it's 2 o'clock already. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think my presentation is done, and thank you for your attention. I don't know if you have questions or do we have time?
Hi, everybody. We are at 2 o'clock, but if anybody has any questions, I can stick around a little while if Gabrielle's got time.
Yeah, or you can email me. And yeah, if you have any questions and if you want to know the details of the intervention, I can provide you more details, or I can refer you to the published papers. And so yeah, I have like 7. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And have a great rest of 2020, everybody, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
I'll be in touch again.
Yes, please.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming, Margaret.
That was great, Gabrielle. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Albert.
Cheers.
All right. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, everybody is.
Okay, so yeah, the recording stopped. Okay.
Yeah, I stopped. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I have, different Zoom meetings
There was a lot
ongoing in my house. And you probably record some background noises, and I keep, trying to minimize that, but
It is what it is. That's right. Life living remotely. Sometimes there's
yeah.
cats. You never know.
7 Zoom meetings.
Oh my gosh, that's too many.
Yeah,
All right.
but thank you.
Well, thanks for making the time for us. And yeah, we'll say goodbye for now. Hopefully you get
Thank
5
you.
minutes to not stare at
Yeah,
screen.
collaborate is like there's some delay. Like every time I, trying to flip my my slide and it doesn't go through, and then I have to click one more time, and then it did 2 at a time. So yeah,
yeah. There's
some
pros
time
and
to get
cons.
used to it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we've been using the owl for years, so kind of like I haven't switched over because Zoom, we sometimes have trouble with people not being able to sign in. Also, like you've got to then record it locally, and then it's like this giant, huge file. Whereas the owl, like it's easier to post the recordings, like it already lives on a server somewhere, and so yeah, I don't know. There's pros and cons.
Yeah,
We can
each one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yep.
I will end this unless anybody's got anything else. But thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, thank you.
And just me.